Hello and welcome to Yesterday's Airlines. It has been more than a month since I last produced a video in this series of Who's Who in 1/400 scale. The idea of this series of videos is to try and explain the 400 scale diecast airliner landscape. There are so many brands and manufacturers operating in the scale nowadays that it can be really hard to keep track of who exists and who's making models and what molds they're using to make those models and where you can get those models from. So the idea of this video series is to give an explainer of some of the brands that are popping up in 400 scale, which seems to be happening on an almost weekly basis now. Indeed, since I've done this image that you're seeing across here, a couple of new brands have popped up. But today's video is going to be featuring the brand Creating Dreams Wings, which is one of those newer brands you may not have heard of. Before we get into Creating Dreams Wings, please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this kind of content and chuck a like on the video. Thanks very much. Also, don't forget to check out my sponsor for this video, which is always Northeast Diecast. And Northeast, as you probably know by now, have an awesome range of second-hand models available at their website in both 200 and 400 scale. Constantly, Matthew is adding new models to the site and there's a really interesting selection available. So check out Northeast Diecast, and when you do check them out, don't forget to use the discount code Yesterday's Airlines 15 for 15% off your order at Northeast Diecast, because it makes an enormous difference. That's Yesterday's Airlines 15 for 15% off your order at Northeast Diecast. But let's get on and check out the brand Creating Dreams Wings. So who are Creating Dreams Wings? Well, they are one of the new, smaller Chinese brands, which is started very much by younger enthusiasts in China. They first appeared actually a couple of years ago now in 2023 with this China Southern 737-300, and they've been gradually drip feeding a few models out onto market. Mostly these models are available only on Taobao stores, so direct to China, but Creating Dream Wings have recently branched out and do have an Instagram page, and so if you want to make contact with them, you can do via their Instagram. Also, they are friendly with lots of the other small brands that are around in China, and they have collaborated with both C Model, as you can see for this Jinyao Air A321, and also Undefined Collectibles, another brand which will make an appearance on these Who's Who's videos. So they're very much part of that new landscape of young Chinese brands which are springing up, making models mainly for the domestic market. Now, I also happen to know that the owner of Creating Dreams Wings is quite a young guy. I believe he's off studying in Auckland, New Zealand, actually. So you can see that a lot of these smaller Chinese brands are being started by younger enthusiasts, which is great to see for the future of the scale. Okay, so I think we'll answer the next two questions together, which is how often do they release and what do they make? Now, Creating Dreams Wings is definitely one of the smaller brands out there, and so far they have released only 10 models across a period of nearly 2.5 years. So they're not releasing enormously regularly, but they have released in groups and mostly towards the end of 2024, so it feels like they are beginning to ramp up production. Their first model in 2023 was the aforementioned China Southern 737-300. This was followed up in mid-2024 with a pair of 737-800s, one again in China Southern, a collaboration with Undefined Collectibles, and the second one, Jinyao Air. Towards the end of 2024, they produced 4 models in quite quick succession. In fact, 5 models in quite quick succession. 2 of those were A321s, the Jinyao Air Wordery A321neo, which is a collaboration with C Models, and also an Air China A321, which they released on their own. But probably the most important and best models that they'd released to that point were a trio of Boeing 767-300s. The first pair of these were in the colours of China Eastern. One of them had the Yan'an feather associated with it for the Yan'an branch of the airline. That's B2568. And they also produced a China Southern 767-300 as well, B2561. The final pair of models that have been announced to date are a break from the previous, and these were released in around April this year, and they are a pair of Cathay Pacific Cargo 747-400 Boeing converted freighters. BHO uniform is the registration, and they represent the first Boeing converted freighter, and these come in both flaps up and down varieties. So that is the 10 models which Creating Dreams Wings has produced up till now. It'll be interesting to see whether there are more releases coming at the end of this year. So what molds do Creating Dreams Wings use? Well, being a smaller company, it is no surprise that they do not have any of their own production facilities or molds, and they don't really need them because there are plenty of brands in China nowadays perfectly happy to make models for others, and it is Panda models which Creating Dreams Wings has mainly used. So the 737s and A321s you're seeing here are all Panda models molds. The Boeing 767-300s are also using the new Panda models 767-300 molds as well, and you can see that there are different engine options here because those China Eastern varieties have Rolls-Royce engines, and the China Southern here that you're seeing does not. Now, so that 767-300 mold hasn't been used dramatically regularly by Panda thus far, and so these three Chinese releases are quite an important chunk of the release set to date. The latest models which have been made for Creating Dreams Wings, the Cathay Pacific Cargo 747-400. This does not use a Panda Models mold. This uses the mold of the other big brand which is getting into making exclusives, and that is, of course, HX Models. So are Creating Dreams Wings models good? I think that's fairly obvious from the pictures you're seeing here. Using Panda Models molds is generally a safe bet because they are almost always excellent, and the quality control and printing likewise, as you can see here, is generally very good as well. So there's no real issues in terms of the quality. I own 5 of the 10 releases that have been made by Creating Dreams Wings, including all 3 of the 767-300s, as you can see here, and I am really impressed by the quality. All of the models coming from Creating Dreams Wings tend to come with their little collector's card, as you've seen in some of the pictures here. And I think these 767s are superb. They are easily the best in 400 scale to date, in my opinion. So I've got no issues in terms of the quality of the models that have been coming from Panda at all. In terms of the HX Models 747 that's been used for the Cathay Pacific Cargo Freighter, which is available both in flaps up and flaps down varieties, again, I have no real issues. In my opinion, this is easily the best 747-400 that's available in the scale at the present time. It's not perfect, very few molds are, but it is very nice. And the finish on the model here is excellent. Of course, these ones being an HX made model also come with a stand. So you can see here that the quality of the finish is really very impressive on these models, and they're lovely additions to my collection. So that's a quick summary of Creating Dreams Wings, one of the smaller, almost hobby-like brands that are popping up in China. They've produced some really lovely models aimed obviously at the Chinese domestic market really, but perfect for someone like myself, and especially with these wonderful 767s that they've made. It's a nice selection of upgrades on previous much older releases, and the quality of the models has been superb. It'll be interesting to see whether they can keep up the same release schedule now that the owner is in education outside China, but they've produced some really lovely models and they're well worth seeking out on Taobao. I've really appreciated what they've made to date. Okay, great. Well, that's another look at one of the smaller brands in 400 scale. I plan on producing more in this series, looking at some of the new and more unusual brands in 400 scale diecast airliners. So keep an eye out on the channel for more of this sort of content. Also, obviously, keep an eye out for the usual release ranking videos and mold reviews. But thank you very much for watching. That's it for this video. I'll see you next time from Yesterday's Airlines. Goodbye.